What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, shout out to the brother Eric for the donation to the channel via the Cash App. Much respect to him for showing love to Too Raw for TV. All right, so uh, Eric had a question for me, and his question was, um, who do I believe is the most consistent superstar of all time? Now, let me say this before I go forward. He's not asking me who I think is the greatest superstar of all time. He's asking me who do I think is the most consistent. And when I think of consistency, I think of a guy who, you can pretty much pencil in on any given night what he's going to accomplish. Not necessarily just stats, but his impact. And you can make a long-ranging prediction about what he's going to contribute and how his contribution would affect the team and how he affects the team. And it's pretty much all positives when it comes to Tim Duncan. I mean, the only thing I could ever think of that's negative when it comes to Tim Duncan is, he wasn't the greatest free throw shooter, but he was pretty average for a center, about 70%, right, for his career. And, he wasn't the most athletic big man, but he wasn't like, a three-toed sloth either. Sometimes he can get beat, especially if you pulled him out of the paint a little bit. And, but in the paint, he was a beast defensively. He could score in the post. He was, for a stretch, the most fundamentally sound big man in the league. He could rebound well. He could shot. He could block shots. He could facilitate very well for a big man. And this comes from working on his game in Tulich, as far as working on his craft when he was with Wake Forest. But yeah, I think Tim Duncan is the most consistent superstar I've ever seen. Not the best, but the most consistent. Generally speaking, if Tim Duncan had played for any other franchise, he could have averaged 27 and 12, right? Easy, 27 and 12. But he sacrificed his numbers for the betterment of the team. And you could still pencil him in for any given night in his prime, about 22 points and 12 rebounds. That's pretty much what Tim Duncan was going to get you or give you every single night. 22 points, 12 rebounds, maybe 3 assists, maybe 2 blocks, and maybe a steal. That's pretty much what you can get from him in his prime every single night. His career average is around 19 points and 11 rebounds. That's with him playing up until he was nearly 40 years of age. So even though he played 19 seasons, he still managed to average just about what he was giving you in his absolute prime on average. So, he was very consistent. He was efficient. And also the demeanor. The demeanor was pretty much the same. Not too high, not too low. He's one of the few players who guys like Kevin Garnett and guys like Shaq said, I know Kim Olajuwon is another guy, but he's one of the few players that was unaffected by trash talk. Tim didn't engage in any of that frivolity. Tim went out there and he did what he had to do. And going back to the production thing, very rare. It was very rare for Tim to play outside of himself, or above what he normally put out there. He wasn't a selfish player. He had a 150-point game in his career. I believe it came against the Mavericks, 53 points. He probably, and I'm just taking a stab at it, he probably had no more than 3 or 4 40-point games in his career. He wasn't out there putting up numbers. He wasn't a stat pattern, you know? And, another testament to his greatness, another thing that shows the consistency was he was always that cog that was relative to them winning. Now, the Spurs were a winning organization before he got there, except for that prior season when David Robinson was hurt. And I think the Spurs only won 21 games. But from Tim Duncan's rookie year until his last, every single year, the Spurs won either 50 or more games or what would have been the equivalency of a full season of 50 or more wins. That's an incredible run. That's an incredible long period of playing winning basketball that has never been historically duplicated. No other player can lay claim to being on a team for that long and part of playing winning basketball for that long. Not Bill Russell, not Wilt Chamberlain, not Magic Johnson, not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, not Michael Jordan, not Kobe Bryant, Shaquille O'Neal, nobody. LeBron James, nobody. Other players changed. Other players moved out. Other players came in, but Tim Duncan was the constant. And once he retired, you saw a steady decline, immediate steady decline in the San Antonio Spurs winning and dominance. And while Tim Duncan never won a repeat title, damn sure never three-peated, but he did win 5 NBA championships during that career. And, every year the Spurs were in it when Tim Duncan was on the roster. Every single year they were contenders. Some years more than ever. And Tim Duncan was able to make adjustments to be relevant. When the league was still dominated by, or at least semi-dominated by big men, Tim put on a little weight and improved his post game even more. And when need be, he was that go-to guy. But when the league transitioned to be more of a perimeter-orientated league, more three-point shooting, well, Tim took fewer shots. He knew that he was not going to be as big a part of offense as he need be. He also knew that as an older guy, he was going to have to run up and down the court, and he had to lose weight. And he lost about 20 pounds. And he adjusted. He became more of a shot blocker, rebounder, facilitator, clean up the glass, scoring in occasional mismatches. And so yeah, I would say Tim Duncan, man, the most consistent superstar that I've ever seen. But tell me what you guys think.